Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. But if you stay, there just might be some cookies in your near future. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Lucyiha. Boss wants to cut off all employees and workers from their email access over the weekend, but doesn't understand the consequences. Let's jump right in. Hello everyone, this is my first post here and wanted to share my greatest work story. My native language isn't English, so please excuse when my grammar is a bit simple. The story starts with me and my company. I'm a 30-year-old businesswoman who works in an IT service in a bank space. I'm the girl for everything basically, but I'm a specialist for first level support, administration, and backup, sometimes even networking. Even though I'm not head of my IT department, I basically had all the responsibilities of them, but unfortunately my pay grade doesn't reflect that at all. I think of my boss of my IT department as kinda lazy, if not incompetent. He even brags about getting so much money for basically doing nothing. I have a 40-hour week, but since the whole IT department is my responsibility, I need to keep track of the servers and maybe problems that can occur 24/7. This is mostly done via emails. When the server status gives out a warning or a failure, I will get notified, and then I'm fixing the problem over remote desktop or going to the company itself, even in my free time. I wouldn't mind this, but I'm not getting paid for this. But on the other hand, I'm getting punished when something is going wrong. My boss's boss wasn't that much better. Since it was a fancy bank, everyone should be in a suit the whole time to let it look professional, best with a skirt and high heels. Only problem is, when you work in the first level support, you need to do a lot of behind the scenes work, like slipping under the desk to do or repair cable management, doing work on the server rack, and doing lots of other activities that makes you dirty. You can imagine that this wore out my business clothes really fast. And not only that, they were so impractical and really made my work harder. So I changed my clothes to a comfy hoodie and work pants to fit the work I'm doing a bit better. When my boss saw me, he was furious, demanded I can't look like a poor hobo inside his bank. I told him that I demand work clothes for both occasions, because they are expensive and get worn out quickly. He refused and I wasn't really happy about this. So much for the introduction. Someday my boss's boss, head of the whole company, called me. He had a plan. He wanted to create quiet hours, means he didn't want his employees working on weekends to let them rest properly. At first glance you could say, hey, that's a nice idea. Yeah, no, he just didn't like to pay them for overwork because he got in some legal trouble with overwork paying in general. Not only that, some employees have strict deadlines and need the extra time to get work done. To actively ensure nobody can work over the weekend, he wanted the following. Please make sure no one can access their emails and remote desktop over the weekend. No exceptions. Since we had a ticket system and been able to attach emails to tickets, I asked him to write an official work task. This has two reasons. First, I like everything documented. Second, I have something to protect and secure myself if the task I was given is incorrect. And it's exactly this that saved me. So I was in my office desk again, thinking how to get the task done and what implication it will have. And then it was clear to me what it meant. The email came from my boss with the task, and indeed, he wrote, "For everyone, no exceptions." I was thinking to myself, should I write them the implications it would have? After thinking, I thought of how I'm treated as a worker, and I decided against it. I was working immediately at this task and made an automated process to block every access to emails after Friday 6 p.m. to Monday 6 a.m. Weekend came and it was Saturday and I was calm and relaxed because if you've not noticed by now, by cutting down everyone's emails means of course that I don't receive any updates on the servers. I can't possibly work on it because my remote access is also cut, of course. If you think you could forward your work email address to your private address, no, I can't, because we have a very strict data protection. Nothing is allowed to go out. I'm happy. It's still Saturday, middle of the day. I'm cooking myself and my husband a nice meal, and my telephone rings. It's my boss's boss. He talks with a stressed voice and told me that he can't access his emails. I needed a second to process this, but I responded, "That doesn't surprise me at all, since you ordered me to cut everyone's email access without exceptions." He was angry, very angry, and told me that this obviously doesn't count for him. I told him that he specifically told me that there are no exceptions, and he stated everyone. He then argued that this wasn't how he phrased it, so I reread him his own email. After that, he was silent for a moment. He noticed his flaw in his logic. I broke the silence and asked him, "Sir, if you still want access to your emails on the weekend, that's no problem. Please send me a request per email, and I will work on it first thing on Monday." A bit angry again, he replied that he wants to have it done immediately, and I calmly explained to him that I can't do this since my remote access is also blocked like he ordered. He hung up. 10 minutes later, he calls me again. He asks me calmly if I can fix the problem right now when he pays me for my overwork. He also wants me to be available at any time, means I should receive my emails and be able to remote work, and that this will raise my pay grade by a lot. I thought that this is the perfect opportunity. I agree to that condition and pay raise, but only when my coworkers and I finally get work clothes. He agreed. Since then, my work situation drastically improved, and mostly only because I maliciously complied, well aware of the consequences of the given task. Thanks for reading. OP added a couple of edits down at the bottom of the story. The first one says, "Edit, thank you so much for all your comments and love. I'm glad you liked it." Edit number 2 says, "I want to add something here to the 4 types of comments. To the people with positive comments and their own stories, thank you so much. I had no idea this would blow up this much. To the people who complain about my English, yes, I'm German, not a native speaker. I'm giving my best here, and I'm trying to improve on it every day. That's all I can do. To the people with hateful comments, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. But there's no need of sharing insults, really. In my honest opinion, it was a valuable lesson for my boss to let them have a well-thought concept before giving the official task. To the people who don't believe and say it's BS, I'm not here to convince you. If I can reach even one person to empower them to improve their work condition, then that's a complete win in my eyes." Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Broken Soul. It says, "If you're not being paid for being on call, why answer the phone in the first place? It can wait till Monday." OP responded to this comment and said, "You are definitely not wrong here. When I received the call, I was fully aware what he probably would say, and I couldn't stand the curiosity. I kind of agree with the commenter here that OP shouldn't have answered their phone, but in answering their phone, they made the boss realize just how valuable they were, and they were able to further their position in the company. So I think OP did a really good job. In fact, they're a pretty good negotiator in my eyes. What I really love about this though is that OP didn't just think about themselves, they got work clothes for their colleagues as well, and that right there makes OP a really great person. This next story comes to us from The Breakup 2013. Short me $70,000 in violation of our written agreement? It'll cost you $1.8 million. Let's jump right in. Disclaimer, the names and some of the situations have been changed to protect the identities, but the dollars and general nature of the situation is completely true. Background: a year out of school in the early 1990s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large, family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took off over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned. What was a rich family and company became exceedingly wealthy with a valuation and net worth in the high 9, low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody, and had a reputation as very ruthless, greedy, when it came to financing, deal making, employees, etc. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time, and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversation, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is, until one day in late 1999, when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks to see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, was a personal matter between the owner and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement, 20% of all profits. Around this same time, and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my work in the business. Based on this sense, I started using both my money and the owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, this means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short. Since the owner wanted big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name. Again, I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst and both accounts, but his in particular, began to skyrocket. Ownership's pettiness. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. To his surprise, I informed him that while we still had some money tied up in options, puts, and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was $1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. Again, I still had a bunch of open positions which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that date. But the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash just sitting in his account, which was in my name. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million, fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but would be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000, before wiring him the $280,000. I also reminded him I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He once again appeared not to understand or comprehend the open position statement, but instead totally focused on and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough. I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him and the company. I knew this wasn't true based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greed and corrupt nature that served as the basis for ownership's reputation. The revenge. Now comes the revenge, since after 2 separate conversations, the owner didn't seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income and thus additional profit. I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million and continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here's the kicker, the owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the 1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account, and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents, or any kind of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all of the shorts and exercised all of the options, puts in this case, for an additional 1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years, and owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice, or since. I know it's a bit crass and even shady AF, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70,000, I felt justified in keeping the additional 1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain, long-term capital gains, and went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since, and I have only told the story to a few people, and even then only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years, I gained greater influence with the ownership in position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the 1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know, I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in a very good financial position. They likely could have been a much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty that they showed me with their vendors, clients, and employees. Thanks for reading, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, OP did post this story about 2 years ago in the Malicious Compliance subreddit. It was posted again recently because OP added the extremely short update at the top that says, "Update, the original post is below. Only this update paragraph is new. There have been no negative consequences from the below, and no consequences other than a few people DMing me with incorrect guesses. In fact, the remaining family members have reached out a time or two about some consulting work. They have no clue." Okay, so have we not learned yet that you don't screw over the people in IT, and you definitely don't screw over the people who are managing your money for you, especially if you're not financially literate enough to know what they're actually doing with your money? Now that I've had a chance to read this story for the second time, a few things come to mind. So that original profit, that $350,000, OP wired that all back to the boss. But did OP not pay any capital gains on that? Because it was in his name, so technically he'd have to pay the tax on that himself. But there's no mention of that at all in the story. Putting that aside, this story is a huge example of how people who already have money can make a lot more money by investing and whatnot. It's a lot easier for them to increase their position. Whereas somebody in OP's case, well, they weren't going to make anywhere near as much. So on the hypothetical assumation that the story is true, OP did a wonderful job of increasing their own position by using the money of somebody who was already wealthy. The statute of limitations is passed, and OP is in the clear. Well done. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.